Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Patrick Dang here. Now, if you are considering a career in sales, or maybe you're just starting your sales career, I know it can be difficult to know what all the different roles are, especially if you're working at a larger organization, right? How do you know what's the difference between an account executive, sales development, business development, account manager? There's all these different roles, and it can be very confusing to navigate. So what I'm gonna do in this video is I'm gonna show you all the different roles that there are when it comes to sales, and you're gonna be able to see which one is going to be the best fit for you based on what you want to do. And you want to make sure that you watch this video to the end, because if you join the wrong organization or you join the wrong role, you might be going in the wrong direction, doing something you don't enjoy. So in this video, I'm going to give you the inside scoop of how this all works. And I personally myself, I used to work at Oracle, which is one of the largest tech giants in the world, and we had a very large sales team of thousands of people. So I'm really going to show you how this all goes down. Now, before we go ahead and get started, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so when it comes to sales, the first thing before we even get into the different types of roles, you have to know how sales is broken down. And especially if you're joining another company like an Oracle, or even if it's a smaller company, it's all about your territory, all right? So let's go ahead and write that down. Territory. Okay, so when it comes to your territory, you have to know what you're getting yourself into, right? Some companies, they might say, if they're a smaller company, they might say something like, hey, if you join this company, you're gonna get let's say you're selling in America, in the United States. They might say you're selling into the East Coast or the West Coast, right? But if you are working at a larger organization, let's say, for example, when you're working at Oracle, they might give you a specific state. So you have to know geographically where you are going. Sometimes it's by state, sometimes it's by region. You know, it's really going to depend. And so when you're joining an organization, make sure you're selling into a place where you feel like you can be successful and you want to actually sell there, right? Because a lot of times you gotta visit your customers in person. Okay, so beyond the geographical location, people might get a little bit more specific, right? So it might be by industry, meaning sometimes they'll say, okay, you can sell in California to retail companies, right? Or they might say healthcare or finance, and it gets really specific. Sometimes it goes into the company size, like small, medium business, medium size, let's say like mid-market. And then what I was doing when I was working at Oracle is I was selling into enterprise, right? So enterprise. So pretty much you gotta know the size of the company you're asked to sell into, right? So if you are selling to, let's say, small companies, like let's say local businesses and coffee shops, obviously the deal size will probably be smaller, so you have to sell more frequently, so there's a lot of velocity. But if you're selling into enterprise, let's say hospitals with over 1,000 employees, then you don't necessarily need to sell, every single day. You might do maybe 5 or 10 deals a year, but because the deal size is so large that it makes up for it, right? So the larger the companies you sell at, the bigger the deals, the less deals you have to do in order to hit your quota. But if you're selling into smaller companies where the deal size is smaller, maybe let's say $1,000 or $2,000 per deal, then you're gonna have to do more volume in order to hit your quota. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. Do you wanna sell into big companies and have a few deals, or you wanna sell into smaller companies and have a lot of different deals, right? So it's really up to you, but you have to know the territory you're selling into, geographic location, the industry, and the company size and what you're selling these things into. Because if you don't enjoy what you sell, you're not gonna enjoy the job. You have to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. So now that we understand the territory aspects of things, let's go ahead and dive into the different sales roles in those territories. So let's go ahead and flip the page. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna mention is there's gonna be 4 different roles we're gonna talk about. The first one we're gonna talk about is the account executive, okay? Account All right, so when it comes to the account executives, you want to think of them as the quarterback of a deal, right? So like I said before, when you're selling at a large organization, you might be assigned a territory. And within that territory, there may be many different salespeople selling to the same customers, but each salesperson has a different role to play in closing the deal. So essentially, you're selling as a team. An account executive, they're the ones that are the quarterback. So they're going to be the ones that have the main relationship with the customer, right? If the customer has any questions, they're going to be talking to the account executive. If there's going to be any demonstration or presentation, that's usually going to be the account executive. And of course, if the account executive is doing so much of the heavy lifting, they're also going to be the ones that close the deal. And obviously, if you're doing more work, you actually earn more commission. So if you're trying to make the most amount of money as a salesperson, account executive is usually where you want to be. Now, for an account executive, obviously their role is to close deals, but at some companies, they have to generate their own leads. What does that mean exactly? Well, they have to find customers, meaning they have to do cold email, send LinkedIn messages, or cold call in order to find a prospect, someone who might be a good fit for their product and service, and actually sell them, right? Now, within the last 5 to 10 years, there's this new role that came about, and that role is to support the account executive, because the account executive, their role should be closing, not necessarily generating leads. So this whole new role came about in the five or 10 years ago, and it's called the sales development rep, also known as the business development rep, right? SDR and BDR. So what do these people do? Well, their goal is to generate meetings for the account executive. Right? So usually if you're joining, let's say, a large company like Microsoft, Oracle, or Salesforce, most likely you're gonna start over here, where your goal is to generate leads with potential customers. You send them a cold email, LinkedIn message, or a cold call, and you ask them for a meeting. And once you generate that meeting, the account executive will then go on the call and try to sell into that customer. But you see, when you're starting out, sometimes you're just generating leads, and that's okay, because how these people make money is they make money from generating the lead. So maybe they might get paid for every meeting that they set up, that qualified meeting that is. Or if they generate a meeting and the account executive actually closes the deal, they might get a small percentage of the commission. And again, it's a small percentage because the main commission goes to the account executive because they are doing most of the heavy lifting. So the SDR, BDR is to support the account executives and generate leads for them, right? Usually you can be an SDR, and then you graduate into an account executive, which is naturally one of the next steps that you can take. Now, what are gonna be the different other roles that you can actually explore here and actually support the account executive is, let's go ahead and go into another one. So I'm gonna put this arrow over here, and that's gonna be the sales consultant. All right, so let's put a little box over here. All right, so what exactly is a sales consultant? They also sometimes are called sales engineers. And essentially when an account executive sells into a customer, obviously the account executive understands what the product and service is and how it fits the needs of the customers. But sometimes if you're selling something more technical, like a software or an API or something like that, you need a little more help because you may not understand all the technical details. For example, when I was an account executive at Oracle selling HR software, right, it can get very technical. So if the customer is asking me, how does this integrate with our database? I might answer that question from a high level perspective, but have I ever coded or worked in a database myself before? No, because that's not really my job. And that's where the sales consultant comes in. A sales consultant is brought in when the account executive needs a little more help when it comes to answering any technical questions, right? And you're not just a technical person because you still are selling. So you still need a little more flavor on getting the customer to like you while answering all their technical questions. So this role is really good for people who don't want the pressure of having to always be the one that closes a deal, but they want to support and talk to people and be in that role where you're selling, but you're a little more technical and you're supporting. So sales consultants are really good for that aspect. And so if that fits with your personality, that might be something you want to look into. Now, what happens when a deal is closed, right? You generate the lead, you get support from the sales consultant, account executive closes the deal. What happens when the deal is closed? And that is going to lead us to the next row, which is the sales manager. sales manager, or they might even call it sometimes an account manager. So let's go ahead and use the phrasing account manager, right? So essentially an account manager is a person that takes care of the customer after the deal is closed, right? So deal is closed, who gets paid? Well, everyone in the territory. So account executive gets paid, SDR gets paid, sales consultant gets paid. Sometimes the account manager gets paid as well. But once the deal is closed, you got a customer, and you obviously you want to maximize the revenue from that customer, so you sell them more stuff in the future. And that's the job of a sales manager or an account manager, depending on the company you're working at, different titles, right? But it's pretty much the same thing. Now here's where it gets interesting. Let's say you got a customer, you already closed them, they've been a client for like 2 years, right? But they want to buy something completely new, and it's going to be a big deal for the company you work at. Well, does the account manager, is he the person or she the person that's supposed to sell the customer? Sometimes, but a lot of times the account manager will bring in the account executive to close the deal. Why is that? If the customer, you already got the customer. Well, sometimes when you're buying something new, your client that you already have may be looking at other options, even if they are already a customer. So the account executive has to come back in and resell that customer on that new product or service. And once that happens, everybody's gonna get a commission, because again, it's by territory. So that's why when you're thinking about the roles you want to join, you also have to think about the territory, because if the territory is not good, nobody makes money. But if the territory is really good and it's easy to sell that specific product or service to that specific demographic, then everybody in that territory is going to make more money. So obviously, better territory, more likely chance you're gonna hit your quota or just blow it out of the water. So that's essentially the 4 different roles when it comes to the people who are actually executing and selling into companies. All right, so when it comes to which role should you actually do? Obviously, if you're starting out in sales, typically you're probably gonna start over here if you're working at a large company, right? Sales development rep, business development. If you're working at a smaller company, sometimes you can do both of these at the same time. And then from here, you can kind of decide if you wanna be a sales consultant or if you wanna go become an account manager. It really depends on your personality. But again, based on kind of what I'm sharing with you in this video, you can get an understanding of which one fits your personality the best. So with that said, that's pretty much all the sales roles that we have to cover when it comes to working at large organizations. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let me know in the comments which one do you feel fits you the most based on what I'm telling you today. And of course, if you have any questions, put it in the comments. I am happy to help. And one last thing, for those of you who want to take your sales game to the next level, I actually just created a brand new in-depth sales training. All you gotta do is click the link in the description and it's gonna take you to that free training. So again, if you wanna take your sales game to the next level, link in the description. So that said, my name is Patrick Dang, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one.